I've got to tell you about squirrel hunting with my dad. We only went squirrel hunting once, as I can remember, at least with my dad. I used to have this little 410 Winchester shotgun with a break action, put one bullet in it, flip it back up, pull the hammer back, and I was a deadly shot with that thing. Loved to go hunting over at Aunt Cora's for blue jays. One day we were in Daviston, and Dad said, let's go squirrel hunting. And me and my brother and my dad loaded into the car, and my mom drove us all the way around past the Mill Creek up into somebody's farm. And we got out there and crossed a couple of fence lines and headed out to the woods. And everywhere we went, we were looking up in the air looking for squirrel nests. Every now and then we'd find one, and Dad would say, Tommy, now shoot through that squirrel nest and let's see if anything jumps out. And I'd shoot through the squirrel nest, and now and then a squirrel would jump out, and then Dad would shoot it. And it wasn't long before we had 4 or 5 squirrels hanging from his belt. He would tie them by the tail somehow to his belt, and we'd proceed on. But I want to tell you the story for a couple of reasons. As we were walking through the woods, the first really odd thing that happened was we came upon this old shack. And Dad knew the old shack was there, and I guess he went there on purpose because he wanted me to see it. And the old shack, we went inside, and the door was all busted down, and one wall was caved in, and inside there was a copper tank and some coils and a bunch of other old equipment, and there were some chop marks in them where they'd been chopped with an axe. And Dad said, you know what this is, son? And I said, I don't know. He says, this is an old whiskey still. He says, so-and-so used to maintain a whiskey still out here in the woods. And back in the days of Prohibition, the revenuers found it, and they chopped it all up. And they didn't catch the guy that owned it, but they chopped up the whiskey still, and it's been like this ever since. And that was kind of interesting. Then we went on through our trip, and the other thing I wanted to tell you about is how I almost shot my dad. And it was pretty scary. But we got to this place where there was this really nice barbed wire fence, and we had to cross the fence in order to continue on our trip through the woods to Grandpa's house. And everybody crossed the fence but me. I was kind of having a hard time with it. And Dad says, now make sure that gun isn't cocked. And I said, okay, Dad, it's not cocked. And I looked at it, and it wasn't cocked, but it was loaded. Had a round in the chamber. And so I started struggling crossing the fence, and I crossed the fence, and as I got ready, I had my gun under one arm. I kind of tripped, and I didn't fall, but I kind of jumped down and landed on my feet. When I landed on my feet, the gun went off. Kaboom! And the round from that shotgun missed my dad, landed about 1 foot from his foot. Wham! And boy, did he react. Oh, what are you doing? I told you not to cock that gun. And I says, Daddy, it wasn't cocked. It wasn't cocked. Really, it wasn't. He says, well, next time you unload it. And I said, okay, I'll make sure it's unloaded. And I was crying. So I wasn't very old. Anyway, we went on to Grandpa's house, and we had 4 or 5 squirrels. I don't remember. Now, what do you do with all those dead squirrels? Well, you make squirrel stew. And Dad showed me how to skin the squirrel and peel the skin off like a sock and cut it all up and gut it out and cut up the meat. And then Grandma Lois made the best stew you've ever had out of that squirrel, out of those squirrels. And we had that for dinner that night.